The first cameramen were the most ordinary of amateurs. They filmed anything that was interesting from their point of view and tried to carry that interest to the viewers. And the viewers, in their turn, discovering something unknown to them, became completely captivated by this new attraction. At that time, no one dared to label cinema as an art form. Possibly, only the most insightful could foresee a brilliant future for the motion picture. In the meantime, the new art form was gathering strength and experience. At the same time in Russia, another flourishing art form was reaching its zenith: classical ballet. Unlike the widely accessible cinema, classical ballet in Russia was entertainment only for nobility, and special value was placed on entertainment. Therefore, ballet performances in Russia were on a grand scale, impressive and extraordinarily expensive. The ballet troupes of the Mariinsky and Bolshoi theaters, each of which numbered up to 250 artists, were subject to the court ministry of His Imperial Majesty. The artistic lord of the Imperial Ballet, who had for half a century been creating, developing, and perfecting this astonishing world of dance in Russia, was Marius Petipa. Not one of Petipa's spectacles could do without the so-called character dances, which gave a special spirited coloring to the ballet performances. Among their performers were their own stars, who the public considered to be no less than prima ballerinas and leading men. One of these soloists from the Imperial Ballet was Alexander Shirayev.
I was personally lucky in the theater. On finishing theatrical college, I managed to learn almost all the male parts of the contemporary repertoire. That's why I rose from the ranks of the Corps de Ballet so quickly, replacing both the classical and character solo dancers.
At the age of 24, without leaving the stage, Shirayev began to teach at the theatrical college. On his suggestion, the first separate class in character dance was introduced to the curriculum, for which he began to devise a special method of teaching. Soon, Petipa invited Shirayev to become coach and choreographer for his ballets. Of new significance was a particular professional quality, Shirayev's unique memory, which allowed him to thoroughly and precisely memorize and recollect dance movements.
The method I came up with to prepare for ballet performances was this. I made my own puppets out of paper mache. They were about 20 to 25 centimeters high, on which all the parts of the body were supported by soft wire, allowing them to be put in any position, answering to the movements of the human body. I made about 20 of these puppets in my spare time. Using them, I planned all the dances I was faced with performing. Then, I would sketch on paper each of the movements in a definite sequence, so that this series of movements would correspond to the whole dance. And under each sketch, I would put a code for the dance. If this sketch record is transferred onto a narrow strip of paper, then having placed the sketches vertically from the top downwards, it is possible to use it on a home cinema projector, which can show all the recorded movements, giving a complete, clear presentation of the dance.
The drawings which Shirayev made on those strips were preserved. One of them we recall. It shows the famous buffoon's dance, which Shirayev himself staged and performed at the Mariinsky Theater as part of the first performance of the ballet The Nutcracker. The buffoon's dance is considered lost and does not exist in contemporary stage practice. According to the recollections of his contemporaries, Shiraev's performance of this dance was tremendously popular with the audience. Beginning in 1902, Shiraev and his wife, Natalia Matveeva, began to travel around Europe and Russia studying and recording national dances. At the beginning of the 20th century, the central streets of European cities gradually began filling with illusions in which programs of films were shown. But the attraction of the moving image was not only attracting the attention of those viewers who had come simply for entertainment. While attending the illusions, the thought came to Shiraev that, while at the time existing only as a show booth spectacle, the cinema could become a unique tool for recording that art so difficult to describe in words and drawings, the art of dance. On one of his journeys around Europe, Shiraev acquired a biocam cinecamera. The advertising for this camera proclaimed, "Photographs anything in motion, from a toy terrier to an ocean greyhound. Truly a fearful weapon to place in the hands of the already dangerous amateur photographer," says the pessimist. Shiraev carried out his first filming tests in village localities in the Ukraine, where he went with his family every summer. He also tried filming dances. It became clear to Shiraev that the use of cinefilm in everyday theater work could be extraordinarily useful. At the beginning of the new theatrical season of 1904-1905, he appealed to the directorate of the Imperial Theaters with the suggestion of shooting the dances of the most prominent performers free of charge, and was refused. The directorate of the Imperial Theaters considered that the photographs, which hung in a special studio attached to their offices, were quite sufficient. Having not received support for his ideas, Shiraev decided to continue assimilating his experience in cinematography independently.
When Petipa revived his old ballet Mlada about pagan Slavic life, I was given the part of a jester with a very interesting dance. There were movements when during a squat, I had to stretch a leg out on the floor. I wanted to achieve a grand effect, and with Petipa's agreement, I replaced this pas with a great leap into the squat. Until then, nobody else had done such a move. And no wonder, the dance was extremely risky. Petipa usually sat in the first wing on the left side. However, when I performed this dance, he would sit with his back to the stage for fear of seeing me break my leg.
At the beginning of 1905, the directorate of the Imperial Theatres proposed to Shirayev to perform Petipa's old ballet Talisman anew for Matilda Kshasinskaya instead of an ordinary revival. At this time, Petipa, without having been officially dismissed, hadn't been invited to work in the theatre by the directorate for 2 years. Shirayev categorically refused to take part in this intrigue against Petipa, who he greatly revered and to whom he considered himself indebted in every way.
Since the continuation of my choreographic work was dependent on my ongoing work as an artist, the only thing for me to do was to hand in my resignation from the troupe and take final leave of my colleagues in the theater.
By now, Shirayev was working abroad practically all the time, in Berlin, Paris, Munich, Monte Carlo, Riga, and Warsaw. In London, he opened a school, nearly all of whose graduates subsequently formed Anna Pavlova's troupe. Shirayev only returned to Russia in the summer. He spent his holiday time in a highly original way. Cinema had come to occupy almost all of the free time of Shirayev and his family and friends. Shooting with the cine camera had turned into an enthralling pastime, giving great enjoyment to everybody. The dance of the little corsair from the ballet The Corsair. Character dancers loved to perform this, but also prima ballerinas who didn't disdain to appear on the imperial stage in this small, unpretentious, but rather likable dance number. The films of dances which Shirayev made remain to the present day the only documented evidence of the character dances in Petipa's ballets and how they were performed.
Petipa was regarded, by the way, as a propagandist of character dance. It seems to me that these so-called character dances, that is, dramatized dances, which Petipa staged, had little in common with the real national dances of this or that people. It is not national dances that led Petipa into character dance, but classical ballet, of which he was a devotee. In that way, even Petipa's character dances were not so outwardly dazzling or spectacular, or they could have been truly considered to be classical variations upon one national theme or another, rather than national dances, even if in a purely theatrical sense. It became clear to me that classical exercise is not enough to instill to the artists the technical skills necessary for character dance. I was convinced that exercise of character dance had to include elements of the national dances used in our practical work. We looked through all the available literature and pictures, but we paid most attention to the national dance and its actual live performance and the possibilities in its native land.
Shiraev's systematic study of national dances allowed him to define more precisely and vividly the national character and color of one nation or another in performances. Like a comic stage hero, Shiraev continued to give over all of his free time to the fascinating world of cinematography. And the more filming he did, the more the possibilities of the camera became apparent to him. While experimenting with filming frame by frame, Shiraev realized the significance of each individual frame for the communication of the combined movements that had been passing in front of his lens. He thus came into the realization, and thence into the practical application, of one of the simplest yet impressive special effects of cinema. In any animation, the most difficult thing is giving life to the character. It is vital for the animator to show every stage of every movement. Only then can his animated heroes seem to behave in a natural way. Shirayev drew the characters of this dance himself. But how? We tried an experiment. We assumed as a basis the filming of one of Khitri's variations from the ballet Don Quixote, in which Yekaterina Maximova performed and copied each frame in a drawing. And then we took down each of these drawings into a separate frame. With this technology, animation conveys very precisely the individual peculiarities and style of a dance. Moreover, it is possible to see in drawings of a ballerina those elusive subtleties and details of a performance which can scarcely be reproduced in even the wildest fantasies of the animator. It was possibly in exactly this way that Shirayev achieved such accuracy in conveying the movements of the characters of his animations. The perfection of his animations erased the border between the living and the lifeless. His puppets looked like absolutely real people. It is even more challenging to do animation with several characters, simultaneously performing different movements. But even this wasn't enough for Shirayev. He turned to the combination of drawn, illustrated, and puppet animation in his film. For this subject, Shirayev used dances from the ballet The Doll Fairy, and we see again that the movements of one of the pirouettes, the one on the left, are very similar to the way Shirayev dances. It should be noted that in Shirayev's work there are no rough edges. His characters move freely and seamlessly, and it is impossible to see how. In order to shoot this short film, Shirayev had to put his dolls into 7,776 positions, each of which had to differ only slightly from the preceding and successive ones, so that the viewers would get the impression of the characters moving naturally. Shirayev's relatives recalled that in the room where he shot his puppet ballet films, holes were worn in the parquet, where he had made thousands of steps from the camera to the stage with the puppets and back again. It was the first Russian feature film. As a matter of fact, the pantomime was based on the celebrated songs about Stepan Razin and the Persian princes. Shirayev didn't rest on his achievements. He was now interested in the next stage of puppet animation, the creation of multi-figure compositions. The Hindu dance from the ballet The Bayadere. The unique experience Shirayev had accumulated in puppet animation had to inevitably find its expression not in the creation of individual dance numbers and scenes, but in a full subject animation film. which eventually came about. It was a choreographical study to the music of Franz Schubert, which was performed by the Bolshoi Theater's prima ballerina Yekaterina Geltzer and leading man Vasily Tikhomirov. Now the Russian press began to say that the Directorate of the Imperial Theaters intends to begin recording ballet performances, dances, and groups with the aid of cinematography, and that, in Paris, tests in this field have already produced amazing results. But times were changing, and a year later, ballet, along with many other kinds of art, was pushed into the wings by the war and the revolutionary reorganization of the world. And what about Shiraev? Having buried his wife and daughter in 1921, he finally left the stage and devoted himself completely to pedagogical work. But he didn't discard his interest in film. He shot these frames on the stage of the Academic Theater of the Petrograd Choreographical College at the beginning of the 1920s.
In the last few years, I've limited my work to teaching at the Choreographical College. Here, I teach classes in character dancing to junior students from different Soviet republics. They show extraordinary interest in the dances and should achieve exceptional success. Who knows, I often think, looking at the rising young generation. Maybe a brilliant future on the stage awaits some of them. It would be the greatest reward for me and my fellow colleagues.
In the foreword to this book, the ballet critic Yuri Slanimsky wrote, "The peculiarity and perhaps the merit of Shiraev was that in a long, drawn-out life, he never knew when to stop. One job would finish, and without resting, he would begin another. An active life knows no limits. It keeps moving, developing, conquering one border after another." Shiraev lived creatively. He never rested upon his achievements and was always anxious to continue. He was a person for whom to stop working was to stop living.